In 2023, Kmart is now near the conclusion of one of the largest and longest declines of a company in American history. It has taken nearly 3 decades to get to this point, but today, in 2023, there are just 2 locations in America, making it all but gone. And while its decline is very well publicized and known, most of the focus on its decline covers usually the last 15 to 20 years. But I'm here to tell you the real reason Kmart failed, and why its future was decided a lot earlier than you might think. This is the real reason Kmart failed. Whether you liked Kmart or not, it was around almost everywhere. Whether you thought their prices were lousy or their stores were outdated, you probably have gone there at some point in your life. And while it can safely be assumed that poor strategy, uncompetitive prices, outdated stores, and a costly merger with Sears were all factors in its decline, these all happened when the company's fate was pretty much already decided. However, the beginning of the end really goes back all the way to the 1980s, before the mass closings of the 2010s, before the merger with Sears, before the bankruptcy of 2002, before its 1994 locations peak, and even before its 1992 financial peak. And it simply begins with the competition. While in today's retail world, Walmart seems like one of the most present and timeless companies that has ever existed, up until the late 1980s and even into the early 90s, Walmart was not just only in the US, but not even a national company. In fact, up until 1988, Walmart could mostly only be found in the central and southeastern part of the United States, with no locations beyond this line, meaning there were no locations on the West Coast and no locations in the highly populated Northeast region of the United States, nor almost any in the highly populated states of Michigan and Ohio. For the most part, up until this point, it was just a regional chain. During that same year, Target, while more spread out, only had 160 stores to start out the year. While it may feel like Walmart and Target are everywhere and have been around for a while, up until about the mid-1990s, that simply wasn't the case. Take a look at the comparison from 1990 to 2000. Walmart and Sam's Club would more than double on an already huge amount of stores. Target would nearly quadruple, going from just 220 stores in 1990 to around 800 by 2000. Once the mass expansion of these 2 retailers began in the late 80s and early 90s, it was over for Kmart, even though their peak didn't come till the early 90s. And while many people associate Kmart stores being outdated as a 2010s phenomenon, many were outdated by the early 90s as well, as a very large portion of their stores had been built in the 60s and 70s, while many of the Walmarts and Targets opening were brand new stores. This is not to say Kmart didn't try though, as they would attempt to adapt, creating Kmart Supercenters beginning in 1991 as a response to Walmart Supercenters. However, despite new locations continuing to open through the 90s, Walmart and Target locations would continue to grow and expand more and more. And this didn't even include the massive expansions of Home Depot and Lowe's in the 90s and early 2000s. Even the growth of these 2 hardware chains would offer competition in many products to Kmart. There also was a mass expansion in warehouse clubs, not just Sam's Club, but also other ones such as Costco and BJ's. This type of retail was basically non-existent before the 1980s and didn't even really take off until the 1990s. By the early 2000s, these major national chains did not care if Kmart was in their way, even if it would take a while for Kmart to get out of the way. The bankruptcy of 2002, though, would be the point of no return. This would essentially be when Kmart stopped being a relevant company by any means, as no new stores and only closures would follow after this year. In fact, you could argue the only reason Kmart survived much longer past this point was due to the retail downturn of the late 1990s and early 2000s, when large chains went out of business, such as Bradley's, Montgomery Ward, and Ames Department Store, then the 4th largest retailer in the country, all went out of business, closing hundreds upon hundreds of stores. There were also other major retailers that went defunct throughout the 2000s, such as KB Toys and Circuit City. The combination of all these stores going defunct likely bought Kmart years of time. Also, as time passed, Walmarts and Targets would become more frequent in the areas that they already were in, with Walmart either building or converting most of its stores to supercenters. Most geographical gaps that Kmart may have been able to have an advantage in were closed. Even if Walmart and Target had to face years of short-term competition from Kmart, it would ultimately in the long run be worth it, because essentially from 2002 onward, Kmart was always going to lose that battle, as the resources just weren't there to compete. So yes, subsequent events did not help the situation, but ultimately, when what we know today as national companies truly became national companies, that is what really killed Kmart. Thank you for watching.